eSaabParts. So I wanted to take a moment tonight to share some thoughts on our 9.3 front suspension kits. Now, a lot of this applies to the other kits we build too. I guess in fact all of it does. But the 9.3 is for sure the most common one we sell. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. So I hadn't been on Saab Central in a while. And I went on tonight and I just went through just kind of pages and pages and pages. And I was looking at threads about suspension, and I was so happy to see some of the things I saw. And some of the other things kind of surprised me. The things that made me happy were the ones where people would make posts and ask for advice on suspension kits. And usually they had found ours, and there's a couple posts then about, they're talking about stuff, and then, a couple days, week or so later, they say that they went with the Saab one, they installed it, it was easy, and they're so happy with it. And, I love seeing that. I love reading that because, often in this business, you only hear from people sometimes when something bad happens. If everything works, of course, definitely sometimes people follow up with it, but you don't always get to see that. So it was really nice to see that. And I knew this was the case, but I hadn't reminded myself in a while. Now, I've been building these kits myself by hand for probably almost 6 years now. And I've learned a lot about the 9.3 front suspension and the rear. That could be in a whole nother video, especially when you get into X-wheel drive. But in the front suspension, another theme you see a lot of is people also came across the I call them the cheapo quick struts, the TRQ, $250 for 2 struts fully assembled. And when I see that, there's just one thing that goes off in my mind, and that's that there is no way to make a quality front suspension and pay to ship it for that price. And that only means one thing. It means that when that kit was being created, the driving factor for every decision about which input part to use was what is the cheapest. Quality was never the number one factor. It's impossible. So will those kits work? Sure, they'll bolt up. Will they last? Absolutely not. And the choice of input parts is something I wanted to talk a lot about here, because that really is the bread and butter. To me, when I look at a front suspension kit, it's sure it's the final product, but to me, it's the sum of the parts. What are the things I need to order? What are the things I need to always keep in stock? And it's a bunch of input parts. And kind of the nature of these kits is if there's one part out of the whole list of things, a bolt, a nut, that I don't have those kits in stock. You need to have all of them in stock. So what I wanted to talk about with these really is this table right here, the contents of the kit. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go line by line and kind of share some thoughts about what led to the decision of this being the strut I use, this being the strut mount bearing I use, the end link. And I hope that you might find some of this interesting, that this is a formula. This is something that's been tweaked over time, and this setup hasn't changed in a while, because what we've landed on really is a great mix of input parts. So the B4s, I am a huge Bilstein B4 fan. And there's a number of reasons why. I think Sachs, which Sachs is the one who made the OEM struts, I think they're a great manufacturer too. But the B4s are affordable, they're very versatile. They won't work if you're putting, Eibach lowering springs on. That's not what you use with that. And I really don't cater to that market, unfortunately. Um, it's it's a tough one because, has anyone seen, if you try to build a pre-assembled lowered suspension kit like that, you're probably using B6s, B8s, B8s, I guess, if you're doing lowering springs. Um, if you compared the price of a B8 versus a B4, it's like 3 times as much. And the B6 is the interesting one. I mean, people have asked why I don't offer a pre-assembled B6 kit, and when each strut is an additional $200 cost, that kit's going to be $400 more. I had a B6 kit, it would be $1,000. Who's going to buy it at $1,000? It looks like a bad value. And so, if you're doing the B6, then, you're probably gonna, I bet most of you would end up, I would absolutely reusing some of these input parts, not giving you all brand new ones. You're gonna use your existing dust boots, your brackets, your hardware, and that's where you're gonna look to save money. But, when you're making one of these kits, you have to include everything, because you can't assume that a person has, you can't assume that they're not in Vermont, so their hardware is going to be perfectly clean and not rusty. So, I'm extremely happy with this price point. We don't make a ton of money on this, especially considering the time put into making them. But the choice of these parts really is something that has had a lot of time and thought put into it. So the B4s, as I was saying, they're versatile. They work in a lot of setups. It's a very comfortable strut. It's not as firm or as soft as people think. It's plenty firm. It can handle any factory spring very well. If you're not looking to lower your car, then 99% of the time, it might as well be 100% of the time, I'm going to say Bilstein B4 without even thinking about it. That's what you should go with. And the other very important factor with these, and why there's no incentive for me to deviate from them at this point, is, I've sold a lot of these by now, probably approaching 500 over the years. And as far as warranty cases go, I've had 2 individual struts, Bilstein B4 struts, go bad. And one of them, I remember both of them distinctly. I already know the names of the customers in my head. And one of them, as it came to be discovered, the strut went out, he sent it back, I rebuilt it with a new one, sent it back to him, and then I come to find out later that there was a lot of missing hardware on that car. Control arm bolts were loose. There was a lot of other problems. So, was it the strut that was bad? I won't ever know. That really caused it. I don't know. But that's at that point. If you have 1-2 failures over 500, that's a great failure rate. I will go with that all day long. What is that? 0.02% if it's 1 over 500. So B4 is 100% my favorite strut, and I love it on the 9.5 OG. Oh, it rides like a cloud. Springs. So as far as factory replacement springs, these days there's really only 2 options for brands. You have the OEM springs, which, let me clarify that in saying that a true OEM spring, or a true original factory spring, are the ones for the 9.3. They're going to have the little paint dots on them. And you know what? They overcomplicated it so much with suspension codes, and this is going to be it would be a whole nother video to talk about, which strut fits my car or which spring fits my car. Some people want to go by codes. There's an easy answer. It's go to the RPO codes and look at the chassis type, map that with the year, the body style, and the engine. Um, and I can tell you which spring to use. And that's why I've stuck with Les Jofers, is for all those combinations. Uh, I have, with complete confidence, I can tell someone which spring to use. The OEM ones with all the variations, it's difficult because, quite frankly, I don't trust their data on it. You could have one that's a V6 front-wheel drive sedan, and they have a different spring for the automatic and the manual transmission. Technically, I get it. The automatic transmissions cars are heavier. An automatic transmission is heavier than a manual transmission. So, from the factory, they compensated for that by using a stiffer spring on the automatic cars. But I've installed plenty of them on cars, and then you put it on, you get the right spring by the book, OE spring by the book. You put it on the car and you just look at it and go, man, that's high, or man, that's way too low. And so I just don't trust them enough these days. Now, Les Jofers, I mentioned about the original factory springs being the ones with the paint dots on them. They don't make those anymore. It's just a finite supply of some of them left. And so, and as they've gone extinct over the years, what Oreo or Hedon has replaced them with are Les Jofers. And I'm super happy with that. I'm glad they did that because, Les Jofers, I joke and say that Les Jofer springs are an easy sell because right in the box, made in Sweden. And as far as failures go with them too, still to this day, never seen one that's cracked. Now, granted, when you see someone post on Facebook or the forums saying that their spring is cracked, yeah, I mean, on their 2005 9.3, that's now 19 years old. In 19 years, will I see a cracked Les Jofer spring? Probably. But hey, 19 years, that's a long time. And so to this day, 6 years into building these kits, still haven't seen it. So there's no reason for me to deviate from this. And the fitment with Les Jofers, they have their own fitment for the part numbers, and I follow what Les Jofer says 85% of the way, maybe 90%. But there's a couple cases on some springs that they say fit certain engine body styles that I've put them on and be like, that's a little, again, a little too high, a little too low. And so the formula's been tweaked. There are certain of these, kind of corner cases where, when you order a kit from us, if you don't tell me the VIN on checkout, you're going to get an email, saying, hey, what's your VIN? Because I really want to tailor this to your car. And that's, another one of the big differences between the eSaab kits and the cheapo kits, or what anyone else offers in this space of pre-assembled strut kits, is that it is made for your car. It's not just a generic off-the-shelf one. And I actually don't, I say right now that there's 5 in stock. I don't have 5 of these pre-assembled standard chassis front-wheel drive kits. I have the parts to make 5 of them, but it's not sitting on the shelf pre-assembled. It gets assembled on order. And so I wait to hear about what your car specifically is, or what you may want. You may have a standard chassis car that you want to go down to a sport chassis because you want a little lower. I'll make whatever you want in that case. And so the springs, I just trust what the offerings that I have with them are now, because you can tell me what kind of car you have and what you want out of it, and I can map that in my head to what spring do I need to put in this kit to give them that. And I'm confident with it because the feedback over the years, and I mean, I've had a lot of 9.3s myself, and one of the first things I do in any 9.3 I own is replace the suspension. I would love to buy a car from me because I replace so much stuff that probably doesn't need to be replaced. But that's a whole nother story. So springs, Les Jofers, I trust the quality. I trust the fitment, but I've tweaked it a little bit. And the supply chain with them, I can get a steady supply of them. I always have them in stock. I have a whole 2 pallet rack shelves wide or tall by like 1.5 wide I have a lot of springs in stock at any given time, just because there's a lot of different configurations and you got to keep them all in stock. Okay, moving to sway bar end links. So in the eSaab kits over the years, I've used 3 different brands, sway bar end links. Back in the day, when I didn't have as much access to some of the aftermarket stuff, I was using the OEM ones. And you know what? I still think the OEM ones are great. In fact, sometimes if I ever run out of, on a crazy rush came in, I sold out over the weekend of Lemforder ones. I've shipped a few kits in, 2 or 3 in the last few months that a situation like that came up, and that person got an OEM one. And I consider that as good as anyone out there. However, the Lemforder, it's, again, the quality. I've installed a ton of these on my own cars over the years. And you know what? They work, they last, they come with the mounting bolts. So if I'm looking to save $1 here or there, to try to keep this price where I want it to be, to make this even worth our time, it's one of those that I don't see a reason to deviate it. Now, I said there were 3 brands. I did use Mealy HDs for a while, and then after that there was a phase where I was kind of switching between Mealy and Lemforder, but I think I had a failure. Mealy sway bar end link fail on one of my cars too soon, I felt. And, that's anecdotal evidence, but it kind of stuck with me. And so I've just, I've stayed with the Lemforders now. I think the Mealys are great. You can't go wrong either way. Look, sway bar end links are just like brake rotors. They're a wear item. They're going to go bad eventually. But so if you have something like that, just start with the best you can. And with that, I think Lemforder is a great brand. You can't go wrong with them. And that also moves into the strut mounts. Now, there's a few manufacturers out there for strut mounts for the 9.3. As far as OEM goes, OEM ones are great, but you know what? They're way too expensive. I think a front wheel drive one is like, I don't know, $70, $80, and that's nuts. People don't, that's too, is it, versus, I think I sell the Lemforder mounts separately for like $30. Is an OEM one 2.5 times better than a Lemforder? Nope. And so really that's what a lot of these, the mentality is, it's value per dollar spent. When I make a decision that's, I need to consider cost on this. It's not the most important, but it is a factor. But it's not just pure cost. It's value per dollar is really the parameter at play. And that's where the Lemforders really fit in, is that, with the 9.3 front suspension, the strut mounts themselves really don't go bad that often. So find one that works. I don't see failures on them. I honestly don't think I've ever seen a failure. I did have one last week. Hopefully this customer watches, that they ordered a kit from us, put it together, got it, but the threads on the top of the strut mount, one of them was a little boogered up. And what I told this customer was, they initial reaction, I get it, you spend a bunch of money, you got it, and something's messed up on it, was they, send it back, get a whole new one. But I'm like, hey, do me a favor. How about this? Grab a M8 by 1.25 tap and just run it through there. See if you can just clean up those threads. Because their top bolt, one of the 3 bolts on the top of the strut mount, wouldn't go in. It would go in sideways. So I'm like, grab a tap, run it through it, and tell you what, if it's the case that that didn't do it, then absolutely. I'll send you a shipping label. Send me that one back. We'll throw a new mount on it. I'll send it back to you. We'll make you square. But if cleaning up the threads did it for you, I'll send you $50 refund just for the hassle. And he got back to us this morning, and sure enough, it was just the threads that needed cleaned up. We refunded him $50, took care of them. Everyone's happy. Anyways, Lemforder strut mounts, their supply line has been great. I can trust it being a source that I can always get them, and they work well. Strut mount bearings, just like sway bar end links, this is a wear item. These won't last forever. Strut mount bearings, there's a few options on the market. There's some cheapos, there's some no-name brands. What we use and what I've always used, I haven't used anything different in kits ever for these, are the OEM ones. The OEM ones come in a GM bag, and there are stampings on them. They're made by INA, which, if you're familiar, INA is a fantastic manufacturer of wheel bearings and all kinds of things. I fully trust them. And the funny thing is you can buy an INA branded strut mount bearing, but they're more expensive than the OE ones. So I'm going with the OE ones. And that's an easy sell right there. The OE ones are great. The dust boot, the dust boot is interesting to me because it seems like such a weird no-brainer one, but there are I can think of three manufacturers of 9.3 strut dust boots. You have Pro Parts, OEM, and Phoebe. There might be other ones in Europe that are available from their suppliers, but in the U.S., those are the three. The Pro Parts one is a garbage part. It's like paper. It's super thin, so it was never considered. In the OEM one, in the initial kits, I was using the OEM one. I didn't know about the Phoebe one yet. I hadn't ever bought one, felt one, seen one. But the first time I did, I opened it up and I felt it. I'm like, man, the rubber on this thing is way heavier duty than the OEM one is. So I started using these, 3 years ago or something like that, and it's all I've used since then. So these ones are it's another great brand, and for something like this, it's hard to mess up. This one's a huge win from a manufacturing standpoint because it's a better quality part, and it costs less than the OEM one. So if every part was like that, we could make one heck of a kit. Don't get me wrong, we already do. But the next part, the spring protector. So there's a couple things you could talk about here. I use the OEM blue spring protector. Now this is I've talked to a few people in recent times about this who are like, hey, why don't you use the zinc plates, the other part that was on some of the cars. And, just from the part standpoint, the zinc plate was superseded away to the blue one in like 04, 05. And the argument against the blue one that I've heard is that it can trap water inside of it. And so therefore people use they want to use the zinc plates. And that's fine. I get it. But it's also, it does protect the spring because it's not all fully exposed on the bottom. But, really the main factor here is that the zinc plates, those are meant for Sachs struts. They don't fit right on a Bilstein. It's not the right part for a Bilstein strut. The blue one is. So it's the only choice I can use on it. And so stick with those ones. I mean, this is how much, this is a $4 part. This is, these kind of thoughts go into a $4 part. So the next one, I would call it the elephant in the room in these kits. A Pro Parts Sweden mounting bracket. Now, I'm fully aware of the reputation of Pro Parts, but I'll say some things that there are some parts that you just can't mess up, and they can't fail prematurely. And the strut mount bracket is one of them. Their mounting bracket is identical to the OEM one, and it's like half the cost or less. The OEM ones have gone crazy expensive, They used to be like $8. Now they're like $20. The Pro Parts one is like $7. It's under 10, maybe it's 50. It's cheaper. And they didn't mess it up. Never had a problem with it. Now, there should be another thing we should say about these is that going back to the difference between the eSaab suspension kits and what anyone else offers is I mentioned before, it's made for your car. And one of those things comes up in the mounting brackets. Now, these brackets, they're technically only for '08 to 11 cars. And on that point, a Bilstein B4 strut technically is only for an '03 to '07 9.3. And the reason for that is as you can see in the picture, actually, in the picture, I show the mounting brackets, and as a B4 ships, it has the bracket for the brake line and the ABS sensor welded onto it that stick out on each side. Now, when you order a kit from us, if you don't tell me the VIN in your order, you're going to get an email asking for it, because this is another reason why I want to know it, is I want to know what model year the car is. Because if you have an '03 to '07, then your kit is not going to ship with the brackets. I'm going to leave the welded bracket on the strut. Whereas if you have an '08 to '11, then you need the mounting bracket. And the mounting bracket won't fit on a B4. I hope someone who's listening has come across this when they were doing their suspension themselves, and they're like, you end up zip tying the ABS sensor on because the brackets that's welded on is in the way. So when you order a kit from us for an '08 to '11, I take both struts over to the vise and chop off the brackets. Then I bring them back over, and I've got a perfect black color match paint. I paint over it for rust protection. It looks better. And you get the brackets chopped off, and then we include the two strut mount brackets. So, I mean, that's something, these off-the-shelf TRQ one-size-fits-all, it's a joke. One size does not fit all on a 9.3 suspension. And these are the level of detail that go into our kits. You're just not going to find that with anyone else. And when I start talking about this and I think $5.99, I'm like, man, this is such a bargain. We have a lot of shops that order these kits from us because whether a customer came to them once and said, hey, I bought this kit, can you install it for me? And they look at it and they're like, man, this is nice, or man, this is going to be so easy to install. And so we have shops that anytime they get a customer, a 9.3 in, and it needs suspension, sure, they're fully capable of assembling all the parts from scratch, but that takes time, and time is money for a shop, and it's money for the customer. Shops at $100 an hour, I'm sure there's plenty that are even higher, 120, 150, whatever it is. Suddenly, a pre-assembled kit becomes a fantastic value for the customer. And these are just so easy to install. So the shops order them from us because they've seen them, they use them, and it's just not worth their time to do it on their own. That's really, I guess, the strategy is I want it to not be worth your time to assemble it, to just get ours. It's easy, it works, it's quality parts, and it's from someone who, as I continue, I don't even know how long I'm into this now, who truly cares about all these little things. There's a lot of thought that's gone on into this formula. Really is a formula. And as we get into the hardware, there's just no other options I want to use for this stuff. I use the OEM stuff. I have considered for the strut top screw, the 3 bolts on the top of the mount. I know the spec of the screw. I could very well go on McMaster and order, a couple hundred of the screws in and, even do some dress up ones or something. But, I like the look of the OEM ones. They're not expensive. And so there's just no reason to deviate. Uh, I want this thing to look like it's meant to be there. And so, yeah, sure. If you want to throw some different fancier screws on, sure, go ahead. But it doesn't add to any functionality. And I don't worry about the cosmetics on this. This is, a very functional approach to it. And, it's I'm very proud of these kits. There's been a lot of thought over the years, and I so trust these kits. And trust is something that's very important with these. Is it's expensive to warranty them because, and it sucks for the customer when that happens. Uh, and so warranties are expensive, and so I want to avoid them at all costs. And how do you do that? Use good parts. Give yourself the best chance of not having those problems come up. It's a lose-lose for everyone. It sucks for the customer, it sucks for us. And so you just want to avoid those situations. So, these 9.3 kits are something that I love making. And I've made so many of them over the years now. I joke, but I'm pretty sure it's true that I don't doubt that I've made more 9.3 front suspension than anyone in the world. I've assembled more full front suspension stacks than anyone else in the world. Uh, I know that's got to be true for the 9.5 NG. But I know how to do these, how to do them right. There's no impact guns that are just, zip zap thing bolts on. Uh, the top nut on the strut is properly held, or sorry, the strut shaft is properly counterholded while I tighten down the nut. I have all the right tools to counterhold every type of strut. I have a little mini toolbox next to my assembly station that has all the right stuff for whether I got a Bilstein strut, a Coney strut, a Sax strut. Um, I have no idea what a TRQ strut one is because I would never touch that. But anyways, the real value proposition with this is you're spending a little more, but if you're having a shop install it, boom, do this all day. The labor, you're going to save at least an hour or two of labor on this. And so it's very the money is very well spent on these ones. And it's you can price all these parts out, price them all out individually. You're not going to be able to get them all from one retailer. You're going to have multiple shipping costs, and it's not going to be much less than this. We buy this in such bulk that our suppliers give us great prices on it, and it's the time that you're going to save, and it's going to be assembled right. I don't use I call them the Widowmaker. Everyone's done it. The spring compressor that you rent from the parts store that is just ready to shoot across your garage and kill someone. The spring compressor I use, I absolutely love. It was some of the best money I ever spent, and it's one of the tools that I have that I'm the most proud of. And it's made 9.3 suspension so reliable and easy to build. Now, I did time myself once. I took out all the input parts, set them on the table, all out of their packages, ready to go. And I was like, how fast can I fully assemble a 9.3 front strut? And I'm pretty sure my time was something like 1 minute and 6 seconds. That's from loose parts to fully compressed, tightened down, ready to go. Now, that's not how I build them. That was at the time when I was going for speed, just to see. But the average, though, it only takes me longer to get all the parts out of their packaging than anything and throw the packaging away. But 2-3 minutes, and yes, it's done fast, but I promise you, it's done right. When you made a mistake when you're assembling. I have various checks along the way of it's unconscious at this point of what I do of twisting the spring to make sure it's fully seated in its little groove on the bottom of the strut. Um, Running my fingers under the top of the strut mount to make sure that the strut mount bearing is fully flush all the way around. And, there's on the note of the little things, uh, the struts as they ship to you, after I assemble it, I grab the strut and I set it on the table, and I know how to eyeball it I hold the strut in the spring and I twist the strut mount on the top to get the bolts, the 3 bolts. They're not uniformly spread out across the top of the mount. They're shaped like a triangle. And I get it to point correctly so that when you grab that strut and you have your old one off and you put it up in there, and how I like to do it is I like to hang the strut. So I'll have the strut off and I'll put the new one on and I'll lift it up, put the strut mount on the underside in the engine bay, and I'll grab one bolt, one of the 3 bolts for the strut mount, and I'll thread one on to kind of hang it up there. And if you've ever done this yourself, you know what I'm talking about. That uh, if you didn't set up the top strut mount ahead of time, then you're going to have to twist that thing to get it to line up right. And you may not realize that until you've already tried to, hold this 20-pound strut up in the air to get it aligned. So these are, with our kits, they're already aligned. So you put the thing up there, that bolt hole is going to line up. Now it may be off a couple millimeters because I do eyeball it, but I'm pretty good at this now. So these are just the little things that they're very intangible things that it's hard to kind of let people know why this is such a quality kit. I'm very proud of these things. We sell a ton of these. I wish we sold even more, honestly. Now, Anthony might not think that because if he's going to package them on some of these days, then he might not enjoy that. But I help him out. I'll make the boxes, but that's beside the point. I enjoy making these kits. I'm proud of them, and I hope that we can keep selling them for a long time. And at this point, there's no reason that I foresee that we can't. So, anyways, that's a lot more than I thought I would say about this, but I hope you got something out of it and enjoyed it. And if you did, let me know, and we'll see if we can make more of these in the future. Thanks, everyone.